If you look at what is happening between Washington and Ottawa right now, it does not look like diplomacy. It looks like a breakup. A messy, expensive, dangerous breakup unfolding in real time. For 70 years, the border between Canada and the United States was the longest undefended line in the world. It was not just geography, it was an economic engine. It was the backbone of North American stability. And for decades, it was the one relationship global markets assumed would never fracture. Until this morning. Just hours ago, something happened that was supposed to be unthinkable. The cameras were waiting in the Rose Garden. The podiums were set, flanked by the stars and stripes and the maple leaf. The pens were ready on the mahogany table. President Donald Trump was prepared to announce what he believed would be another signature victory, another moment where Canada, buckling under the immense weight of American pressure, would bend the knee. But the other podium stayed empty. Mark Carney didn't show up. He didn't sign the paper. He didn't offer a polite counterproposal or a forced smile for the press corps. He didn't play the game. Instead, he boarded a plane, flew back to Ottawa, and issued a statement that may change the price of the car in your driveway, the food in your fridge, and the future of millions of jobs across the continent. This wasn't a scheduling error. It was a calculated diplomatic detonation. President Trump thought he had Canada cornered. He operated on the assumption that the disparity in market size gave him absolute leverage. But Carney didn't blink. This wasn't some minor dispute over dairy quotas or softwood lumber shipments. This was the 6-year mandatory review of the USMCA, United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, the massive trade pact that replaced NAFTA and governs roughly $700 billion in annual trade flows. According to leaks from inside the negotiation team, Trump walked into the final meeting with a demand that crossed a sovereign red line. He didn't just want better terms, he wanted total control. The president reportedly demanded a revision to the agreement's sunset clause. Instead of the current 16-year certainty with periodic reviews, Trump demanded a clause that would allow the United States to cancel the deal unilaterally every single year. It was a demand for a trade agreement held hostage, renewed annually only if Canada stayed obedient to Washington's shifting whims. He gave Carney an ultimatum: sign by noon or face a universal 25% tariff on every Canadian product starting Monday. Carney's response wasn't a tweet. It wasn't a tantrum. It was silence. He packed his delegation, left the White House without a word, and at 10 p.m., Ottawa sent a simple, chilling notification to the U.S. State Department. Canada is formally withdrawing from the review process. The deal is not renewed. Some viewers may think this is just political theater, a high-stakes bluff that will be patched up next week. But look at the evidence. 3 distinct receipts make it clear this is a fundamental break. 1. The leaked Redline Memo. A memo dated just 3 days ago has surfaced, outlining the American demands. It didn't just ask for concessions, it demanded surrender. The document called for total, unrestricted U.S. access to Canada's Arctic waters, the complete dismantling of the dairy supply management system within 30 days, immediate alignment on energy exports, a threat of Section 232 national security actions against Canadian aluminum if Ottawa refused. This wasn't a negotiation. These were terms of capitulation. 2. The markets, a signal of strength. Normally, when trade tensions spike with the U.S., the Canadian dollar drops like a stone. But today, the opposite happened. The Canadian dollar ticked upward. Why? Because global investors are betting against Trump. They see Carney's move not as suicide, but as strength. Markets are signaling that Canada has options, and for the first time in history, the United States is being viewed as the unstable partner in the relationship. 3. The border. The squeeze begins. Reports are already emerging from the Ambassador Bridge, the busiest border crossing in North America, of trucks slowing and inspections intensifying. Trump is squeezing the border immediately to force Canada back to the table. But Canada isn't scrambling. They are diverting. Rail shipments through Vancouver and Montreal are being prioritized toward Europe and Asia. The logistical pivot has begun. Trump operates on a simple brute force model. He believes that because the United States economy is 10 times larger, the United States always wins. But modern trade is not a scoreboard. It is a machine, a supply chain web so dense and intricate that if you pull one thread, you don't just hurt your opponent, you strangle yourself. Take the auto industry. It is the beating heart of the Great Lakes economy. A single car part, a piston, a seat frame, a microchip, crosses the US-Canada border 7 times before the final vehicle rolls off the line. It is a system built on the assumption of a frictionless border. If you slow that border down even slightly, you don't punish Canada. You shut down assembly lines in Ohio, Tennessee, and Kentucky. Inventory is just in time. There are no warehouses full of spare parts. Executives in Detroit are privately warning the White House that if this collapse lasts even a week, tens of thousands of American workers could be furloughed. The president is threatening to break the legs of his own manufacturing base to spite his neighbor. Trump is fighting a trade war from the 1980s about steel and lumber. He doesn't understand that the 2026 war is about energy, minerals, and the infrastructure of modern life. Canada supplies more than half of the oil the United States imports. Crucially, this is heavy crude, the specific chemical grade that U.S. refineries in the Midwest and Gulf Coast are engineered to process. You cannot simply swap it for light sweet crude from Texas. If Ottawa restricts flows or adds export taxes, gas prices would spike overnight in critical swing states like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. Furthermore, Carney is executing strategic decoupling. This is the idea that Canada cannot afford to remain permanently dependent on a partner that has become erratic and unpredictable. For the last 2 years, Canada has been quietly building a safety net. Critical mineral security agreements with the European Union. Long-term energy partnerships with Japan and South Korea. Expanded Indo-Pacific trade routes that bypass U.S. ports. Canada is positioning itself not as America's junior supplier, but as a global resource superpower. We are witnessing the end of the branch plant economy. If the USMCA collapses, the era of cheap goods in North America ends. The friction costs alone will drive inflation back up. Grocery bills rise. Canada is a massive supplier of fertilizer and processed foods. Housing costs surge. A tariff on Canadian lumber adds thousands to the cost of a new home. Tech inflation. Aluminum inputs for iPhones and EVs, sourced from Quebec smelters, will spike in price. This is an inflation shock waiting to happen, timed perfectly to disrupt the U.S. midterm election cycle. As Carney was leaving the White House, a Fox News reporter shouted a question that cut through the noise. "Mr. Prime Minister, are you worried about the president's wrath?" Carney stopped, turned, and delivered a line that will likely be studied in history classes. "You can't tariff gravity, and you can't sanction geography." We aren't going anywhere, but we aren't taking orders anymore. This is the Carney Doctrine. It is the realization that Canada's geography, its resources, its Arctic position, its water, is an asset that the world needs, regardless of what Washington thinks. Right now, military and economic planners are gaming out 3 scenarios. Scenario A, the cooling off period. Wall Street panics so hard that Trump is forced to call Carney back. Stock markets tank, donors scream, and advisors scramble to find a face-saving exit. Business lobbies flood Washington, and the 2 sides sign a temporary extension, kicking the can down the road. Scenario B, the trade war. Trump follows through with his threat of a universal 25% tariff. Canada retaliates, but not blindly. Carney targets what hurts Trump's political coalition most: Kentucky bourbon, Harley-Davidson motorcycles, Florida citrus, and manufacturing inputs crucial to swing states. This becomes a test of endurance. Who blinks first? Scenario C, the full breakup. Trump declares a national emergency and freezes assets or closes the border entirely. Carney responds by redirecting energy exports and restricting flows of critical defense minerals like uranium and cobalt. The USMCA is formally dissolved, and North America fractures into 2 rival economic zones, forcing Mexico to choose a side. Donald Trump went all in on a bluff, assuming the old rules of power still applied. Mark Carney called it. And now, The entire world is waiting to see the cards. The real question is not just whether Carney is protecting Canada or whether Trump is overplaying his hand. The real question is whether North America is about to enter a new age, one defined not by partnership, but by rivalry. History is moving fast. The longest undefended border is now a front line. The integrated economy is now a vulnerability. And this may be the week the old North American order finally breaks, replaced by a cold, transactional reality where geography is the only thing keeping the neighbors together.